Experience has shown me that failing seldom leads to death and destruction. However, I need the fear of failure to get through tough spots. Preparing for today, I was terrified of sucking in front of all of you. I use this fear to get through the endless edits and relentless practice sessions run by Patrick. Interestingly, understanding this fear in myself and others has made me a better teacher. In high school, I had good grades, good SAT scores, some key awards, and got into a good college. Like many not quite mature enough freshmen, I was overconfident and got overwhelmed. My grades fell and my beer gut soon preceded me around corners, but I was too ashamed to ask for help. My grades, not the beer gut. After freshman year, I was put on academic probation. My parents weren't impressed with my grades, my foosball skills, or being on the beer team. They put me on notice. I had to get a B- average or they'd pull the plug. I wasn't even close. My grades were worse. Lost and defeated, I packed my stuff and went home. My world changed. Less than a week after finals, I was working as a hotel desk clerk. To take classes part-time, I applied to local schools. It was humbling to be turned down by places that had recruited me only 2 years before. Working 40 hours a week to pay for these classes reminded me of the tuition I had squandered. Afraid of facing cranky business travelers again, I returned to college in the fall with a new plan and a great respect for desk clerks. In most of my courses, I did fine. I went to class, new for me. I went to the library each weeknight at 7 and didn't drink between Sunday and Friday. Things were starting to look up, except in physical chemistry. I was sitting on the C-D grade line, terrified of failing again, and nervous about seeking help. The prof, Phil Brooks, had said at the beginning of the semester, while he was not the best teacher, teaching was something that he worked at and cared about. Speaking that openly to a class of at least 50, he showed a vulnerable side and might be open to help. Even though the prof seemed available, I waited until things got pretty dire before going to see him. I'd rarely asked for help before, so I pre-scripted a spiel asking how I should prepare for the final exam. I trudged up the stone steps to his office, nervous about talking to him and scared about the outcome. He said 3 things I never forgot. First, practical advice. Get a study guide and remember that the mean on the final will be in the 60s, so a grade in the 50s will pass. Study 50% of the material very well and ace that, and then you'll be fine. Second, what I test you on in this class will not show whether you'll be a good chemistry researcher or not. Lastly, if the exam does not go well, you should think about whether you should be a chem major. It didn't seem like he was challenging whether I should be a chemist or not. He just wanted me to be sure this was something I really wanted. As I walked back to my college room, his second statement stuck in my mind. Grades don't test creativity or research skills. The whole conversation took about 10 minutes. But it had a huge impact on me, not only because he turned out to be right, but mostly because he cared. I passed his course and later graduated with a chemistry degree and had the confidence to go to grad school in a related field, material science. Not so strangely, I use a lot of what I learned in his class in my research. Phil Brooks' words were a touchstone for years. I've often quoted him to other students and colleagues. I tried several times to find him when I returned to campus and felt guilty that I'd never thanked him for his advice. I thought it bad karma to quote him in this talk without thanking him first, so I wrote him last month telling him how his words mattered to a struggling student 35 years ago. He wrote back thanking me for the note and said it had come at a good time. He was having a busy week, getting ready for the semester, and my letter was a pick-me-up. He remembered saying similar things through the years to students and assumed that they forgot about them. And he had always tried to be as open and honest and supportive as possible and was glad to hear that that mattered. If I'd have been a B student with a question about a specific topic, he may have gone over a problem or two and I'd have been on my way. Because I was in trouble, he could have lectured me about buckling down and applying myself. Instead, he took the time to listen to my problems and to say things that could really help, and as it turned out, have a lasting impact. Like many students, it was hard for me to ask for help. While some may have thought it a throwaway line, Phil Brooks' comment that he may not be the best teacher, but he worked at it, showed openness and some vulnerability. Subconsciously, I felt that I could come to him, when I was in trouble. When I got up the courage to talk to him, he offered some sound advice and support, but not judgment. When I started at UNT, I asked other faculty about being available for students and got a range of old school answers that focused on keeping my distance. Don't cross the line. Wear a tie. Always keep your door open when you talk to students. Almost everything was defensive. I soon decided I wanted and needed to bridge that line. What stopped students from seeking help? I remember feeling ashamed and afraid and thought that asking for help was a sign of weakness. Students often think they are unworthy of help or an instructor is too busy. Why? Perhaps because they've almost never asked for help before, or they feel anonymous and unimportant in large classes. Early each semester, I share some of my past, hoping to convince students that I was in their shoes once and struggled with issues like they do. I hope showing something of myself will persuade students they can come to me for help. You don't need to share your life story. The professor, whose past was a little vague, convinced Gilligan had helped no matter how big a mess he got into. In this forum 2 years ago, Mike Wesch talked about the importance of showing vulnerability to your class. He suggested merely asking questions rather than making statements encouraged participation and increased a feeling of belonging. Creating a sense of belonging and caring allows students to connect with faculty and each other. When students come for help, they're at their weakest and most unsure. This is both a problem and an opportunity. We have to find a way to connect with them by overcoming their fears and embarrassment. Because they are at a low point, we can make an immense impact. These sometimes brief encounters can have great influence on their academic paths and perhaps their lives. Being open and honest with students can be uncomfortable. But by doing this, we can distinguish a worthwhile university experience from a mediocre one. My preparation for this talk reminded me that showing vulnerability can leave you feeling exposed. But as I learned from Phil Brooks, it gives me the best chance of reaching students and having an impact on their lives. Thank you.